Danny Parkins, co-host Breakfast Ball, the winner of the mythical FS1 NFL Picks Championship. It should be noted, it's just like the USA Today High School Basketball Championship. It's all mythical, so let's not go crazy on this shit.
Listen, it is definitely true that I only made it a competition between you, me, and Nick once I started to crush it and distance myself from the field.
Yeah.
That so, going into next year, if I start 4-9, it's just luck. But when I'm crushing it, it's skill, and you guys are in a competition you didn't even know you had entered.
Yeah, I had no
Yeah.
idea. Yeah. You know, I said I've had three of my favorite shows. I would say in the last 10 years, I have had the last three shows in a row. I've had about as much fun as I can have at this point of 30 years of doing it.
Wow.
So, because I love free agency, I love the movement, I love when stuff breaks on the show. Um, I sometimes I think, the audience thinks we love football and football season, but I actually find it more challenging when the season's over and we have to sit there for 2 hours in the morning and figure out ways to be
Yeah.
compelling, and there's not a lot
Yeah.
out there. So this week, it's basically you've got B-level players, sometimes C-plus players transitioning to bad teams. And yet I had so much damn fun this week. And I want to start with the Bears because I honestly, and I don't remember the last time I thought this, it's obvious Ben Johnson now runs the
Correct.
organization because he basically, by acquiring a guard, a center, a guard, is telling Ryan Poles, your picks were not good. You know the organization well. That's my take. Is there are certain coaches. Vrabel in New England is running the show. Belichick for years ran the show. McVay's got a lot of power in Los Angeles. Whereas Brett Veach really runs personnel because Andy Reid doesn't want to do it. Sean Payton's running Denver. Didn't it feel like to you this is all Ben Johnson's stamp?
So I've heard you say this, and I think that you're like 85 to 90% correct. Um, Ben Johnson clearly now outranks Ryan Poles. And it's not a
Yeah,
straight like who makes more money, but it kind of is. Ben Johnson makes
yeah,
considerably more money than Ryan Poles. And obviously Ryan Poles' stock is down, and Ben Johnson's stock could not have been higher. So Ben Johnson has more say. And the Jonah Jackson move is directly tied to Ben Johnson. And that was the first move that happened. They traded a late round pick for a guard from the Rams who had been a former Pro Bowler. But before he was with the Rams, he had been with the Lions and Ben Johnson. Obviously, the Lions have the best offensive line, them and the Eagles in the NFL. He knows how valuable that is. I think Ryan Poles has taken a little too much heat in this regard. He was Matt Ryan's offensive lineman at BC. He is a former
yeah,
offensive lineman. He was on a practice squad in the NFL as an offensive lineman. His first ever first round pick, because the first year he didn't have a first round pick because the previous regime had traded one
yeah,
away to acquire Justin Fields. So his first year, his first draft, he had two second round picks, and he took uh, Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker, who are both starting players in the secondary. And then the next year, when he had the ninth overall pick, he traded down one spot, passed up Jalen Carter. I disagreed with it, but he
yeah,
didn't think the organization was ready for the headache. And he took Darnell Wright, who looks like he's going to be the right tackle for the team for 10 years. Maybe not an
yeah.
all pro, but he looks damn good. Like he's
Yeah, good
going to get
player.
a set. And some of the draft people were like, should it have been Broderick Jones, the guy who went, I think, 17 to the Steelers, who wasn't able to start for a year plus
Right.
and definitely is not guaranteed to be a 10-year starter in the NFL. And then, so I think first time he had a first round pick, he drafted a tackle. He gave Nate Davis money. Nate Davis had a pretty good reputation. Mark Schlereth has told me that he's like, Nate Davis was one of my favorite guards in the NFL when he was in Tennessee. Atlanta tapered off a little bit. Bears paid him. And it looks like Nate Davis got paid and stopped trying. Like, and
Yeah,
so, but it's not like that guy didn't have good tape, and it's not like people didn't like him, and it's not like that wasn't a significant investment in the offensive line. Tevin Jenkins was a former second round pick as a tackle who he moved to left guard, Ryan Poles did. And he was a better
Yeah.
guard than tackle, but then he got hurt and he can't stay on the field. And he never invested in center, which has been a disaster. The Bears literally haven't had a good center since Olin Kreutz. And left tackle is Braxton Jones, who I would not say is good, but I would also not say is bad. He's a
Yeah.
replacement level player that Ryan Poles drafted in the 5th round out of Southern Utah. That's a draft win. What happened last year was a mediocre offensive line got hurt with a rookie quarterback, and you fired your play caller and your head coach. So you couldn't scheme around it. The offensive line was a disaster. Your quarterback got hit 68 times, and it became a fire alarm. Like, we are going to get Caleb Williams killed. We are like really flirting with David Carr level of sabotage here if we don't overhaul it. So that's long-winded and maybe a little bit more in the weeds than people that don't follow the Bears want to know. But like, I don't think it's that Ryan Poles doesn't prioritize the offensive line. I think it's that when he took over, he had such limited resources with draft capital that it took a while. And last year was never supposed to be a good offensive line, but it wasn't supposed to be that bad. And
Right.
I think that anybody would have spent on the offensive line this offseason, but Ben Johnson kind of turbocharged it. And so he gets credit for it, but I have a hard time believing that a smart guy who came up under Brett Veach, who, by the way, I'll add one more detail. He was the director of college personnel in Kansas City when they lost that Super Bowl to Tampa. And in the offseason, they signed Joe Thuney, they drafted Creed Humphrey, and they drafted Trey Smith. Creed Humphrey now set the market at center. Trey Smith set the market at guard. And now Joe Thuney's a Bear, and he was an All-Pro for a couple of years in Kansas City. So like, he was in Kansas City when Mahomes got killed in a Super Bowl. They brought in 3 new offensive linemen. He's the GM in Chicago when Caleb Williams got killed. They brought in 3 offensive linemen, one of whom is literally the same guy they brought in Kansas City. So I think Ryan Poles knows about the offensive line, cares about the offensive line, prioritizes the offensive line. He just made a couple of bad mistakes. Nate Davis, most principally, not investing in a real center, probably right behind it. And he underestimated how little depth he had to protect Caleb Williams last year.
Who's scoring big in the NBA this season? You are. All the new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Slams, dishing the ball, cleaning the glass, get behind your favorite players, prop bets you can make on DraftKings. It's fun. The home of NBA player props. If you're ready to place your first bet, make it really simple. Pick how many points your favorite player is going to score. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook. They have an app. Download it. Make your pick. If you're a first-timer, here's something special. New DraftKings customers, all you have to do is bet $5 to get 150 in bonus bets instantly. So take it to the rack with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download their app. Takes 90 seconds. Use the code Colin, COLIN, to get 150 bones in bonus bets. Betting just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. You know, it's interesting about, as I move my operations primarily here in the next 6 weeks, primarily to Chicago, how bad all the teams are there.
Oh yeah.
Yet the Bulls have led the NBA in attendance 3 or 4 straight years. So the passion's still there.
The Bulls. I don't have it completely committed to that. I mean, the Bulls have led the attendance like 20 of the last 25 years. Like since I mean, it's legitimately crazy. Like, I can look it up, or one of your producers can look it up. Like, since Jordan left, like 1999 till now, they've literally led the NBA in attendance more than 80% of the years. It's insane. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it's a sports town it's the opposite of Los Angeles. In LA, our owners are the richest. Yeah. Steve Ballmer, Stan Kroenke. In Chicago, they're some of the poorest. Our owners are in their sort of earning prime. A lot of the Chicago ones outside of Ricketts are not. Our teams are all hyper aggressive, and we have star coaches everywhere. Chicago does not. The difference is, in Los Angeles, if teams aren't really good, people stop going. In Chicago, they don't. So I've always said, and you've never lived in LA, but I've always said, LA, it's a double-edged sword, is that you have to be aggressive because our weather's so
Yeah.
good. We've got beaches and Vegas is so close. Like people just say, we're not interested. Like the Dodgers are great. And they're like, yeah, we just won the World Series. We're going to spend 450 million more and put
Right.
150 into our clubhouse. Because in Los Angeles, it's like people move on. I mean, Steve Ballmer was rolling. He builds a new facility. People are like, yeah, Luke is in town. There's other stuff. Whereas in Chicago, and I haven't been there enough, but I feel like there is a real pride in the city. People in Chicago kind of look at you sideways if you even mention the weather. It's like, yeah, our winters, you wear a coat. It's just funny. I feel like I'm moving to a city that is sort of diametrically different in terms of ownership, teams, star power, and loyalty. And I do think LA is a great sports town. It's better than Miami, which also has beaches and weather. But people here are really, really distracted in Los Angeles, and they're not as much in Chicago.
I think that you're 100% spot on. Like, there's not a ton to add. I mean, I can go deep on like any of those topics, but like, you know, Jerry Reinsdorf owns the Bulls and the White Sox, and he cares way more about the White Sox than the Bulls. His son, Michael Reinsdorf, basically runs the Bulls, but both teams have a bunch of minority partners. Like, he doesn't own over
Yeah.
50% of them. It's like a bunch of rich guys that own 1%, 5%, and they cobble it together and they go from there. And it looks like he's getting ready, even though he loves baseball, but he's the diehard baseball fan. He hates spending money. They have, there's a crazy thing going around. Ishbia, the guys who own the
Yeah.
stock.
I know
Yeah, okay,
Justin.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, they're apparently buying up minority ownership in the White Sox, and they're reportedly
Yep.
in line to be next. Um,
Yep.
And White Sox fans are cautiously optimistic because there's this like funny thing going around Chicago in one of the towns in the North Shore of Chicago, where I was from, where a lot of the wealth in Chicago lives, like on Lake Michigan. Ishbia is building a mega mansion on Lake
Yeah.
Michigan that is estimated to be worth more than any single contract the White Sox have ever given out in team history. It's estimated to be like an $86 million mega mansion compound. And I believe the largest contract the White Sox have ever given out is still the $75 million. Because it was Yasmani Grandal, and then it was the left fielder whose name I can't remember because the White Sox are terrible. But the biggest one ever is 75 million. The Cubs ownership and the Cubs organization is excellent. They frustrate some people because they are top 10 in spending and people think they should be top three. But they make a ton of money and they spend them a lot of money, but they don't
Yeah.
really operate.
People and people I know in and out of Chicago like the Ricketts, Tom Ricketts, a
Tom
lot.
Ricketts is as normal of a billionaire. Like he
Yep.
he sits, he doesn't sit in the suite, even though he has one. Most of the games he sits in the second row or the first row behind the Cubs on deck circle, and he shakes hands and takes pictures and signs autographs. Um, and the Cubs make a lot of money and they put a lot of money into the team. They break even, is like what they say. Um, but the rest of the ownership is pretty brutal. It's pretty brutal. The McCaskey family wealth is all the Bears, and there's a million of them. So in terms of kids and grandkids, and so they don't all want to be in it. And yeah, Chicago is an amazing city. And you mentioned like the pride thing, like pride in the city. I've lived in New York where there's a ton of pride, Kansas City, ton of pride, Syracuse, college town, and Chicago. That's where I've lived. I've traveled all over the world. So I am definitely biased. Chicago is my home. But people in Chicago, Chicagoans, man, they take so much pride in the city, the people, the neighborhoods, being Chicago tough, but Midwest nice, capital of the
Yeah.
Midwest. And it's sad that like Chicago became a like political lightning rod word for people around like the gun debate and all of these things when it's so unfair and we don't have to get into it. We can, but we don't have to get into it. Um, and so I think that also kind of like hypercharged Chicagoans in the last, call it 10 plus years, um, where it's like, we know we got some problems and we know we have some
Yeah.
gun violence and some poverty and we got problems, but we have a lot of hardworking Chicagoans who are working on it and caring about it, not moving
Yeah.
out of the city and doing it. And it just seemed like people were who don't give a shit about Chicago at all were using it to score cheap political points. And I think that even though the city's always had a tremendous amount of pride, in the last, just as our political cycle and the internet has like polarized us even more, I think it's like rallied Chicagoans together even more to have like a
Listen,
tremendous amount of pride and like protectiveness over the city.
yeah, I mean, I think I have pretty good taste, and my wife's got remarkable taste. I mean, our favorite North American city is
It's
Chicago.
the best.
The people I know that live in Chicago, it's won eight. It's been the best city in America, like 8 straight years. Condé
Yep.
Nast, like it's
Great.
great. I always said this: if the parents were the federal government and all 50 states were kids, California is the best looking and the richest and gets the most criticism. They have to literally pay into the federal government every year because they make so much money. Like 28 of the states or more need a check to pay their bills. And those are the states that often criticize the good looking kid in the family, California, more. And the second most criticized state is Chicago, which gets voted best North American city over and over. So, I've always said this that I've traveled abroad. Mom was British. London's my favorite place on earth. And then, Los Angeles and Chicago I love because there's just lots to do. Some people want to live in small towns. I grew up with one. It bored the living hell out of me. There's just not enough stimulation for me. To each their own. I'm not into hunting. It's not my thing. But it is funny that I tell Ann we keep picking these cities that everybody tells us are awful, and we absolutely love them.
Chicago in the summer, like, listen, I'm a year round.
And the fall.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure. I'm a year round Chicagoan. Like that's for me, that's my happy spot. I'm incredibly jealous of what you have set up right now at our network. I'm incredibly envious. But there's just something about the world-class international city where you can do anything at any time relative to some places it's also affordable.
Yes, very.
It's beautiful. And while the traffic with the construction right now on the Edens is hellacious, like when they're doing the construction, generally like outside of that, um, it's pretty easy. Like it's a pretty
Yeah,
easy,
I
it's a
think
pretty
so.
like great public transportation, four
Yeah,
lane, 4 lane
yeah,
roads in downtown. Um,
yeah,
alleys for like the trash isn't on the street. Plenty of, you can take a train into Midway, into O'Hare,
yeah,
to Wrigley, to White Sox Stadium, to basically
yeah. You have a zoo in your downtown. It's awesome.
awesome. Yeah. Millennium Park, relatively new, beautiful, ton of green space. Yeah,
Stunning.
it's the lake is the water supply to the city. You have a beach with a skyline behind you and a fresh body of water. It's
And by the
amazing.
way, not just a beach. Even my little area where I live has three public beaches.
Oh, yeah, all the
Three.
North Shore suburbs, yeah, Wilmette, Winnetka, Glencoe are all awesome beaches. Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's I mean, listen, we could do this for hours, man. Yeah, sports, music, culture, food, cost of living, accessibility, cleanliness. Uh, you can fly anywhere in the world nonstop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fly to Tokyo nonstop, can fly to Hawaii nonstop, can fly to anywhere, obviously in Europe, most places in Asia. Yeah, it's the best. It's the best. I love it. I love it so much.
But But circling back, it is completely polar opposite of Los Angeles in
Oh
sports.
my
I
God.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah. No. But listen, I think that, like, I love you giving Chicago credit for it. I think that, and we've talked about this a little bit, like, as both just like guys who love radio and you still do it. Um, Cleveland, Detroit, Minneapolis, Chicago, New York, Philly, Boston, Kansas City. These are great sports radio towns, great sports towns, and they have a
yeah,
through line of cold weather. Like, great sports town that is warm weather town are outliers. And often,
yeah.
like Dallas, obviously Cowboys obsessed. I think Mavericks fans are a little underrated in the ecosystem of NBA fans. Like, Mavericks playoff games kind of jump off the screen, but like, it's not it's not a great sports town. Miami, as you mentioned, not a great sports town, obviously. LA,
Right.
good sports town, but they can lose interest. Um, in the cold weather cities, you're not losing interest. You don't lose interest. And the people from the warm weather cities are like, because there's less to do there. Yeah, that's probably part of it. But I think there's also just a little bit of a like, man, we all are all in this together. Like these are our teams. We rep it, the city pride. And so I loved doing local sports in Chicago and Kansas City because it really was in the fabric of civic pride within those cities.
You know, we'll talk some free agency here. You know what's really amazing? There's a reason Virgin Voyages was voted world's best by Travel and Leisure and Condé Nast readers for the second year in a row, and you deserve to find out why. Over $1,000 in value is included. Everything from menus crafted by Michelin star chefs, cabins meticulously designed, gorgeous place to feel renewed. Help that stress melt like ice in a frozen drink. Hide away in your private terrace, dance the night away. It's your voyage. Live, dine, unwind, repeat. Things are great on Virgin Voyages. Theme sailings to the best onboard music, entertainment, parties, and more. Epic experiences mean there's never a dull moment on a Virgin Voyages sailing trip. All year long, well-being months at the beginning of the year, all the way through holiday voyages to close out the year. Virgin Voyages has it all. Explore the Caribbean. They have that week-long adults-only Caribbean escape. That's great. Book now, virginvoyages.com, or contact your travel advisor. So and I always give NBA executives a bit of a break. You get maximum these days like 2 years of college tape
Yeah.
on a
Yeah.
guy. You have to go back to high school tape because, and the truth is, you could be at Gonzaga and a guard, Jalen Suggs, and you only face an NBA guard in your out of conference games. You got very little to work on. In the NFL, you have often 4 years and 3 years of tape, and there's NFL bodies everywhere in the Big Ten and the SEC. I'm getting NFL dude on NFL dude, multiple years of it. Yet, this is astounding. The hit rate on draft picks, like playing for a few years, is 51%. It's just
Tough
insane.
sport.
Steve Kime, my buddy, always says if you can get 3 starters a draft, like the Vegas dealer, boom, you're good. Is that you get to the fourth round, and all my GMs are like, you get to the fourth round, it's probably not a starter. If you have the right system and you draft for the system, you have a much better chance. That's why continuity is so important in this league, because Andy Reid, I mean, even with Mahomes and Andy Reid and Brett Veach, they have missed on multiple
Yeah.
receivers. Now, just think about that. Veach is first or second best GM. Andy's brilliant. Who can make anybody work? He got Sky Moore wide open in the red zone in the Super Bowl for a catch. Like, literally nobody on him in a congested area. And Sky Moore didn't work. And I can mention multiple other, receivers there didn't work. And I wonder, not to catch off guard, but with all the tape, I think the reason that draft percentage is so low, and I think it's harder, is because the NFL pension for coaches is really good. And there's a lot of money in this NFL business, and virtually everybody feels like they're upgrading. I think in the NBA, assistant coaches know if you're an assistant under Steve Kerr, you might as well sit there for years until the job
Sure.
opens. Like, right, right. Like everybody knows if you don't have two stars, you're not going
Yeah.
to win. In the NFL, there is this sense, hey, I can make this thing work. I mean, I draft a quarterback every year. And so every assistant in the NFL, every coordinator wants to be a head coach as soon as possible. And it creates this transitional league, and that really hurts drafting. It really hurts drafting. And the money now is so great as head coach that the money is now so great in college and pro in coordinator jobs that everybody is trying to upgrade. It's like being in college with a girlfriend. You're like you're looking at everything, right? And I feel like in the NBA, assistants are like, hey man, wait until you get the right gig. So and that's my take is why this draft number is so low. There's too much movement.
I think that there's probably like a lot of factors, and that is a good one. And I think that impacts everybody. I mean, it's not the exact same, but we're gonna see it with Sam Darnold. Like situation matters. It just matters. He's gonna be worse in Seattle. People are like, oh, like Clint Kubiak, like similar-ish system, good offense. It doesn't matter. Darnold's gonna be much worse. He's gonna be much
Yeah.
worse. And I know you love him and he's your guy, but
I think he's going to go 24-10 from 35-13. I think he's going to be about a 23,
okay.
24, 10, 12 touchdowns. He'll be a more athletic, cheaper, younger version of
Okay.
Geno.
Maybe that's about right. But and go from 14 wins to 7, and we won't talk about him, and he will have gotten paid. And it's like situation just matters. We do it. We do it all the time. Like, what would have happened if the Bears would have taken Mahomes instead of Trubisky? Would Trubisky have 3 Super Bowls? I don't think so, but he'd be much better. And Mahomes would still be awesome, but he wouldn't have the MVPs maybe, or he wouldn't have all of the rings. Like these are unanswerable sports talk questions, but like situation matters up and down. So if you want to pinpoint it on the draft, I'm definitely with you. And I'll go back to Ben Johnson in Chicago. Like Ben Johnson was one of the rare guys who was able to like have job offers and turn them down because he knew that they were going to be there again the next cycle, because he was like, I've got Laporta and Amon-Ra and Gibbs and Montgomery and a top 2 offensive line and a head coach that everybody loved. Like he knew his stock wasn't really going to go down. But then, so like I wanted to believe though, when he took the Bears job, I was like, oh, look at the Bears. Like he turned jobs down 2 years ago. He turned jobs down last year. The Bears are the perfect job. This is amazing. And then when he did the interviews, he was like, I knew midway through the year that I was leaving, and the Bears were like the job that he wanted. Among the jobs this year, like he was just ready to take a job. Just ready to take a job. And so I don't think this is directly addressing your draft point, but I think it matters for all of these guys. Rookies, free agents, assistant coaches. Steve Spagnuolo is amazing. Dave Toub's amazing as defensive coordinator and special teams coach. They also happen to coach with Andy Reid. And like they're not getting head coaching jobs. So Kansas City just benefits from, oh, you want to hire our offensive coordinator away? Who gives a shit? We have Andy Reid. But no one apparently wants to give Steve Spagnuolo another head coaching job. That's just the Chiefs' benefit. So the Chiefs benefit from continuity in more ways even than Mahomes and Reid and Veach. They benefit from continuity all throughout the coaching staff. And that has to have ancillary benefits on everybody, not just draft picks.
That's why when they miss on Sky Moore, he still can have a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Like they squeeze the juice out of even their misses. By the way, the Rams with Tutu Atwell has been a miss. They've squeezed every ounce. And if you would have had a new coaching staff, that have blown him out. And you'd have had to the Rams, Tutu Atwell is a great example. They're bringing back, they're like, listen, we're going to bring in Devontae. We're going to keep the kid. We think we got a year to 2 to win a Super Bowl with Matt. Like, let's just keep the continuity. Tutu Atwell was a continuity signing. That's all he was. And I think, and so it's funny when people say, "Why do you like the Rams so much the last 2 years?" GM, ops, owner, quarterback, coach, like it's all the same people. I mean, they go through defensive coordinators, but it's the same scouts, it's the same people. So I am my staff at FS1. It's I would argue in the history of this business, sports talk radio on the radio side, it's the greatest staff ever assembled. It's an incredible staff. I mean, I have writers, I have guest bookers. My guys could all have other jobs, and we just have an incredible environment. Now, I don't know about TV shows. Stephen A. Smith could have 30 people. I don't know how many. But in terms of a radio staff and the humor and the writers and JMac, it's an incredible group of people from graphics on down, audio. It's just really strong. And I've told people this before. They're like, how long do you think you're going to do it? And I'm like, I like everybody so much. And I'm like, it's like, and part of the reason I like it is because I'm quirky and they all get my bullshit. And there's and that's why Andy Reid is a barker, but Spags gets it, Mahomes gets it, Kelsey gets it. So Andy, like at the end of Philly, can wear people out, and I think it's just one of those things where if continuity, like I read a story the other day, like fewer Americans are moving, and I'm like, that's actually a good thing. Like mobility is for the young. Like, I don't want a country where 40-year-olds are like me and they're bouncing around. It's like, it's probably not healthy for families. Like,
I can tell you that 3-month stretch was really stressful for mine. Like I can tell you that. I'm like, we're back to like, we just took a nice family vacation. We're looking forward to another one this summer. Oh, but like together as a family unit, like when I get to maybe being in your spot, and we can have some time apart, that would be fine. But for now, it's stressful. That's fine.
So I thought it was interesting today where Adam Schefter was almost annoyed with Aaron Rodgers, where he came out and said, pick a team. So I said this on the air today. If you ever tell a corporation, listen, I need more time, I'll get back to you, you have to have the self-awareness to know how that lands to the corporation, especially if you're in a valuable position. It's a big F you. You're literally going back thinking, ugh, what a prima donna. I usually tend to think really smart people have excellent self-awareness. And I wonder sometimes with Aaron, is he the rare smart dude, doesn't read the room well? I mean, he goes on this darkness retreat in Green Bay and then is shocked when they're like, take a hike. Like, how can you be shocked?
I don't like, but here's the thing with Rodgers, and there's a lot of it. He talks a lot, but do we believe anything he says? Like,
what do you mean?
He said he didn't have cell service. Like, he's like, oh, I'm not, like, you live in Malibu in like a $25 million house. You have cell service. Like, it was just, I think that he has a lot of narcissism to him. And he's like, I love the silence. And then he brought a film crew. Like, these things are just in conflict with each other. You know what I mean? I think that he is so I don't know that he knows exactly what he wants. And I think he loves attention. And I think that he told Mark Schlereth, and Stink has told the story publicly, he did like a week 16 or 17 Jets game. And Stink said that they talked for almost 30 minutes. 20-something was about the running game because Stink's insane. And he was like 5 or 10 minutes was about his future. And he's like, Aaron told me point blank, like, I'm only going to keep playing if the situation is perfect. Well, now apparently it's down to the Steelers and the Giants. Imperfect. Imperfect. Now, at least the Steelers, to me, makes perfect sense. That one makes perfect sense. He loves Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin loves him. Mike Tomlin, apparently, it's impossible for this guy to have a losing season. Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, Duck Hodges, it doesn't matter. It's impossible for this guy to have a losing season. So, obviously, you're hyper relevant. The fans care. You'll look good in the iconic jersey. You'll get to play against Joe Burrow. You'll play against Lamar Jackson. The AFC North plays the NFC North this year. So the Steelers host the Packers. They go to Chicago. Aaron will eat that shit up. Like he will, like that, to me, that makes sense. He can have an expectation of playing in a playoff game and maybe winning a playoff game that Tomlin hasn't done since 2016. They're not going to win a Super Bowl, but that makes sense. If he comes back and he plays for the Giants, it's just pure vanity.
Sorry to interrupt this great video, but please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you. Now back to the video. Okay, so I'm going to argue because this was a discussion today on our show. And I said, because I've moved so many times that I get a yellow pad out, pros and cons. And I said, I'm going to be Aaron Rodgers. I don't have to move. I get an offensive coach. I get neighbors and a really good left tackle. And I'm going to have more juice in the building because the coach and the GM are getting fired. Or they lost Najee Harris in their left tackle. They're completely tone deaf to offense. I'm old and don't want to get hit, and they haven't had a good line for 7 years. I'll have really no power in the building. And I'm going to have two guys that are both going to demand the ball, and neither one runs a complete route tree. I can make an argument selfishly. Like every time I've ever thought about moving, my take is, who is my Svengali in the building? Will somebody get me? Brian Daboll's worked with Daniel Jones. He's worked with Josh Allen. Brian Daboll's been around forever. Mangini calls him one of his best assistants he's ever known. Like you go into a building with a guy, you can literally be on the same wavelength. I mean, Arthur Smith does not appear to be likable, and Mike Tomlin does not appear to care about offense. And you got two receivers who want to be ones. I look at Pittsburgh and think, this is a powder keg.
Okay, so two things. One, I could be wrong. I obviously don't know the man. I don't think he cares about moving. He'll like come on. He travels to Tahiti and Thailand, and he lived for 15 years in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He'll be fine for 8 months in Pittsburgh. Like I have a hard time believing that is going to be a determining factor for him. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think he'll be fine. He's a very well-traveled individual. He'll have as much power in the offensive side as he wants. Who knows? Maybe they'll fire Arthur Smith and they'll hire Nathaniel Hackett. Like he's the offensive coordinator in and of himself. I think he loves Tomlin. I think that they've flirted with each other. They wink at each other on the sideline. He shouts him out when he does the McAfee interviews. I think he's got a respect for him. Conspiracy theory, McAfee today retweeted a video of Rodgers talking about Tomlin from like 2021. I think it's happening. Like I think it's happening. I think he's going to announce it on that show. McAfee is a Pittsburgh guy or a Pennsylvania guy, whatever he is. He's doing some show in Pittsburgh coming out soon. He's calling it Big Night Act. And I don't fully understand the McAfee universe, but like I think Rodgers, who's apparently making 7 figures from the guy, which is amazing, good gig if you can get it. I think he's announcing that he's going to Pittsburgh with McAfee at his show in Pittsburgh, and he's a Steeler. That's what I think's happening.
All right. You're probably right. I'm just telling you the stuff that matters to me, which is don't have to worry about moving. Left tackle, offensive coach, great weapon, and I'm going to have power in the building. I'll get a say in the building.
Where do you think he wins more football games?
Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So I guess, okay. And then so the other thing I wanted to say to you, and this is like developing more as my media career continues to, I just get older or whatever. I root for interesting. Powder keg, great. Awesome. It is so much more interesting if Aaron Rodgers is in Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin.
You know what? Great point.
So that I've said it. I had our guys work up a Photoshop of him in a Steelers uniform the day the season ended. Like to me, it's made obviously if Minnesota wants him, that's a better situation. Obviously, so I can see him holding out for that. I think they're going to go with JJ McCarthy. We'll see, and the Steelers would be on national TV 6 times. They would be hyper relevant and hyper interesting, good or bad. So if he's going to play and we're going to talk about him and he's going to suck all the oxygen out of a room, I would much rather him do it on a 10 or 11 win team than a 5 or a 6 win team. So I'm personally am rooting for Pittsburgh.
It's interesting. You and I both. That's I like fresh produce. I'm a chef. Just give me the best ingredients. That's all I
Yeah.
care about. J-Mac last year before the season said Chicago's the most interesting team. And they were early until they were just,
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
bad. And then by week like 10, you're like, okay, they're not interesting. If let's think about this. The three most interesting teams next year. So I think this year the Bears are really interesting because if Caleb struggles again, he may not be the guy. In fact, he's probably
Yeah.
not. So, rookie quarterbacks, I never think the team is too interesting because it's going to be ugly and you can't make any stern judgments. Like, obviously, Jaden Daniels is terrific. He's Lamar Jackson, NFC. It's over. We don't have to argue about that. So, I think Chicago is my most interesting team. Um,
Well, then let's get those weekly hits on the TV show going, buddy. Let's go. Chicago.
okay, let me think about this for a second.
I mean, I think Washington's pretty high on the list. Like,
I I will say this. I think Kansas City pulling back for a year because the offensive line is absolutely in flux. Their left tackle has never been a starting left tackle. It's like, boys, that's honestly like having a Bentley and finding the cheapest insurance on the market for it. It's like, no, just call Progressive or something. Okay, let's not go discount insurance. So I think Kansas City, I predicted the Niners and Dallas would pull back this year. They did. I'm gonna say Kansas City's gonna pull back for a year. Their offensive line is in flux. I mean, if this kid from San Francisco to left tackle doesn't move, also Joe Tooney may have been the most had more dexterity than any offensive lineman in the league last year. He's
oh yeah.
gone. So Chicago, Kansas City are fascinating. Um, how about this? Green Bay. I loved Jordan Love. Last year gave me pause. What if Jordan Love struggles this year? Like, what if it's
From your mouth to
listen,
God's ears.
Chicago's better, Detroit's really good. As long as Kevin O'Connell's coaching Minnesota, they're viable. I I really like Jordan Love. And then there were times I watched them last year and I'm like, oh, I don't know if the coaching staff right now trusts Jordan Love. Like, I'm not sure they do. So I'm going to go Chicago, Kansas City, Green Bay, and we'll do four. I'm going to say, and I don't know how interesting they'll be. I think New England, Vrabel, Drake May, a basically 30% new roster. I do think they'll get Travis Hunter. I think that's going to be a pretty damn interesting team. Those are my four: Bears, Chiefs, Packers, Patriots.
Yeah, so let's revisit this after the draft because I'm not
Okay.
at all convinced that the guy that the Chiefs paid is for sure the left tackle. I think it's for sure the left tackle now, but I could see them. This is the last year of Kelsey. He's made it clear. We don't know how much more Chris Jones has in him. Obviously, Mahomes is going to be there and Reed will be there, and they're going to be good for a long time. But I could see the Chiefs trading up in the first round for a tackle. I could see that happening.
Or a tight
Or
end.
or a tight end. Yes. Like I just think I could see a big draft day move for the Chiefs to try to inject a blue chip offensive player. Um, so you know, where Shador Sanders goes, how far he falls, is Deion Sanders like coach in waiting? Like that, like does Shador Sanders fall to 21 and he goes to Pittsburgh and he goes to Mike Tomlin and he sits behind Aaron Rodgers? Then they're really damn interesting. Or does he go to the Giants and it feels like a mortal lock that Brian Dable gets fired and they hire Deion Sanders? Pretty damn interesting either way. So I think that we're going to change a little bit of this out of the draft. I loved what Urban Meyer said on your show, by the way, side note, parenthetical, on Travis Hunter. If you believe Cam Ward is a superstar, then Cam Ward's the number one pick in the draft. If you have any doubt, then clearly Travis Hunter's the number one pick in the draft, in my opinion, because it's just a value proposition. Like, if you think he can be a Pro Bowl corner, well, that's $25 million a year. And if he can also be a slot receiver, well, that's $15 million a year. Even if he's a slot receiver for 12 snaps a game. So I love it. And so I think wherever Travis Hunter goes, his team immediately becomes interesting. But let's remove the draft from it to get back to your point. Obviously, I'm with you on the Bears. I think the Chiefs in an all-in situation is a great pick. The thing that I don't agree with on the New England point is that all of the guys that they added are new, but not terribly interesting. And while I love Drake May, I think he looks like Justin Herbert to me. I was disappointed that they didn't figure out a way to get him a number one. He has nobody to throw the ball to. And even if the line is better and Morgan Moses upgrades their left tackle situation, no doubt. Vrabel, they spent all that money on like Carlton Davis and Spillane and Milton Williams. And I'm like, man, help your quarterback with a rocket arm, please. Like, now I know Godwin went back to Tampa. They can't help that. I know the Bengals franchise tagged. T. Higgins can't help that. You couldn't beat the 58th pick for DK Metcalf? Like, Cooper Kupp better be a Patriot. Like, do something to help out Drake May in terms of pass catchers because he has nothing in that regard. So to me, they need some weapon to totally get there. And Green Bay is just not new enough. Like, everyone's back. Watson, Dobbs, Wicks, Reed. They're so young. They're so young that there's just not a lot of turnover there to make them all that interesting, though I'm definitely rooting against Jordan Love and the Packers in general, just like the Chicagoan in me. I'm trying to think who you left out. So I think Washington, the reason I said Washington while you were thinking about it is I think Jaden Daniels had the best rookie quarterback season of my lifetime.
No question.
I think he was better than Herbert, who set the touchdown record.
Better than Andrew
Luck. RG3,
no question.
Cam Newton.
Especially if you look at his third down and fourth quarter numbers, they're Joe Montana, his 11th year in the league.
They led the league in fourth down conversions. Fourth down conversions with a rookie quarterback. They led the league. It was remarkable and then he won playoff. He went to the NFC Championship game. But the guys who've had amazing rookie seasons recently, Justin Herbert, it's been up and down. CJ Stroud this past year, he won another playoff game. I don't think it was all his fault. He was staring at the sky so much. His offensive line was a disaster. Diggs got hurt. Tank Dell got hurt. Nico Collins got hurt at various points. But CJ Stroud did not take another step from his rookie year. Well, we could say plateaued. If Jaden Daniels takes another step, like the year two in the system, year two in the league jump, well, then he's going to win MVP. He will win MVP, like Mahomes won MVP his second year in the league, like Lamar Jackson won MVP his third year in the league, second year in a system. Like he will be the MVP of the league.
Well, also, if he's great, not to interrupt, but if he's great again, then we have found our top five quarterbacks.
Correct.
Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Burrow, Jaden. Because we all like Jalen Hurts, but we're like, well, the line.
I think it's ridiculous.
Barkley.
I think it's ridiculous still. Eagles fans kind of bother me with this.
But I don't remember a time. Most of my life, there have been three great quarterbacks, maybe four in the league, and then it kind of peters out. To have five first ballot level Hall of Fame talent, if Jaden comes out and even duplicates last year with much better players around him, then we've got five first ballot guys. And by the way, now I'm moving because of his mobility. I'm moving Stafford to sixth, and I believe especially if he could get in that Super Bowl circle again, win or lose, you're going to have a hard time keeping him
Oh,
out.
I think
Um,
Stafford, now that he has a ring, is pretty. I will be shocked if he's not a Hall of Famer with where
I
his
mean, just think
numbers are
about
going to
this.
end up.
He's not far from his prime. Okay. For him to be the sixth best quarterback in the league, mostly because he doesn't
Yeah.
move. The other guys move. The NFL, like I've said this, we're in the golden age of quarterbacking, folks. Like if he's six, if Herbert and
Herbert.
Hurts are
Yeah,
seventh,
Herbert.
like
Can we not forget about
we are
Herbert,
at an
please?
all-time
Yeah.
high.
By the way, do you have a line to Harbaugh? Can you
Yeah.
can you tell him to throw a little bit more, please?
To who?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But you use the Bentley analogy. I know that the winning went up, and I know the passer rating was very good, and I know he loves to run the ball. Can you just, from the Football Appreciation Society, don't let my guy Justin Herbert not be 26th in the NFL in attempts again or whatever he was, please.
Well, they lost
I know.
Palmer. So now they have Lad McConkey. They need a tight end in the first round and a receiver in the third. Like it's one of those things where, and I've said this about Jim Harbaugh, it's kind of fascinating. San Francisco, he had Michael Crabtree. It was an O-line, D-line physicality. John Harbaugh's the same way. What's the one thing the Ravens haven't had? Wide receiver talent. They've always been a little shy. The Harbaughs, it's their nature. He could have taken Michael Thomas, who he loved. He took Joe Alt. It's who they are. Their DNA is we want to intimidate you. We want to physically, listen, they let go of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. They kept Bosa and Khalil Mack. That was very clear, their DNA.
I know. I just, as a guy who loves Justin Herbert, I wanna see the guy throw a little bit more. What were we just talking about? I'm sorry. I feel like I lost my train of thought. But Washington. What Houston did off of CJ Stroud's rookie year was correct. Oh my God, we have a quarterback. He turned our franchise around. We won a playoff game. We have a ton of cap space and a stud quarterback who we know we have to pay on a cheap deal. Let's go all in. And Stephon Diggs was crazy expensive. Daniil Hunter was crazy expensive. They paid Mixon. Like, Mixon didn't really work. He was fine. It wasn't really his fault, but the offensive line was a disaster. Diggs was working, then got hurt. Daniil Hunter was fantastic. Washington is in the exact same spot. And we've now seen what they've done. Like, Debo, we're going to give Kingsbury and Terry McLaurin and Jaden Daniels, we're going to give them a toy and see how it works. We are going to trade a ton of capital for one of the best pass blocking left tackles of his generation to protect our investment. And then they paid Kinlaw, I think, too much money. But they didn't want to get too much weaker on the defensive line when they lost Allen and they brought in Kinlaw. So maybe they'll do one more trade or for a move or whatever, but they're going to maintain cap flexibility. But we've seen their moves. D tackle, left tackle, Debo Samuel, plus what they had in the draft. They're better. And Philly got worse. Now, Philly got worse by design, and we know it, and they should because they didn't want to pay Milton Williams $100 million so they could pay Jalen Carter $150 million next year. Philly's top 10 players are still all excellent. They deserve to be the favorite. But I think that what Jaden Daniels did in year two, does it plateau? Does it go down? Does it go up? Because he's got way more talent and he should be only more comfortable in the NFL. So to me, they are very high on my list of interesting. The division, the teams they play, sleeping
He
giant of
reminds
the
me of
fan
Sean.
base, the ownership change. Like Washington's very high on my list of interesting.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels, the quarterback, reminds me of Sean McVay, the coach. Like you're like a month in and you're like, yeah, he's way ahead of where he should be. Like
Yeah.
McVay was going up against good coaches and you're like, how were they so bad last year? And how are they like going when he had Goff go toe to toe with Mahomes at the Coliseum? Remember, because there was going to be a game in
Yeah.
Mexico, and you're like, okay, we're looking at maybe the greatest young coach by far in league history. Maybe John Madden, Sean McVay. You know, people have said you guys are getting high on him. It's like, no. Like I can remember Jordan's rookie year, and it's like oh, I haven't seen that. Like the hand size, his ability to just play hard every second on the floor, which Urban Meyer says that about Travis Hunter. It's like 65th snap. He's literally racing down the field blocking people. Like he has a motor that never stops. I think Jaden Daniels is one of those. Oh yeah, this is Lamar Jackson. I watched Lamar his first year. He started week 11. They got to the playoffs, and I went and watched him in person. I think it was against the Chargers. They didn't know. They didn't know how to defend him. It's like, everybody was like on eggshells, like, don't commit. It was the non-committal defense. Like he was terrifying people.
The rookie quarterbacks who have won at a very high level, Dak Prescott had that awesome winning rookie season where he didn't really throw any interceptions. Russell Wilson, Big Ben. Every rookie quarterback who's won big in my lifetime, they weren't the reason. None of them. Like they weren't.
Except Jaden.
That's my point.
And Luck.
But one big. Like he was in the NFC Championship game. They won 9 one-score games this year. Like he was like fourth quarter comebacks, third down, fourth down, passing, running, playoff wins. Now, like, listen, the counter argument is 9 one-score playoff game, not 9 one-score wins, and they beat Tampa by 3 in the wild card round. They lose that game. We are at least having a little bit more doubt about Jaden Daniels, but I'm not going to invoke Michael Jordan, but I also was 2 when Michael Jordan was a rookie, so I'm not completely dismissing what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I'm pretty positive he's great, and his team should be much better in terms of around him. And again,
well, they won't be in as many one-score games. So the truth is, you go, oh, they were 9-1 in one-score games. They will not be in 10 one-score games.
Probably not. And so to me, that's they're just, again, the whole premise was like most interesting. I'm with you on the Bears. I'm with you on the Chiefs. I'm less so Patriots, and I know we're just doing this off the top of our head, but Washington is very, very high on the list. I'm trying to think of the AFC team that you left out. I mean, listen, I do think Harbaugh Herbert is incredibly compelling. Because
I think they're going to win their division.
You think they're going to beat the Chiefs?
Yeah, I think the Chiefs.
Wow.
Listen, I think.
Have you told Nick this yet?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, but he didn't. There was static in his ear. He didn't really hear it. But I do think to win like they did last year, they went from the worst defense to like the third best. It's like, okay, that was all coaching. It was the exact same players. And that not every defensive player knew that system wrote. Like you're some of these young guys are like, hey man, we are learning on the fly here. So I just think they also will draft as well as anybody in this sport for the next 2 years because of Harbaugh's connection to college football. So I think they're going to go get 4 to 5. I mean, last year they went in the 5th round and got 2 corners, like both can play. It's like, okay, they're going to draft different than everybody else. It's the Pete Carroll out of USC the first 4 years. They hit on everybody, like 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. They were hitting on everybody. It's one of those built-in advantages, and I think it will pay dividends again this year.
Are you a believer in Pete Carroll this time around?
There are ceilings with Pete. His fascination with Geno Smith is his ceiling. He doesn't care enough about quarterbacks as I don't think. I think the difference between offensive coaches and defensive coaches in this league is the urgency at quarterback. I mean, Andy Reid's moving off a Pro Bowler.
Yeah.
Sean McVay is moving off Jared Goff. Like defensive coaches, you get me Geno, hey, I can win a lot of games with Geno. And I think, I mean, Aaron Glenn, hey, I can win a lot of games with Justin Fields. I think defensive coaches think differently. It's in their DNA. And I think Pete looks at Geno as, hey, man, he'll complete a bunch of passes, stay out of trouble. And So I think Pete, that's the ceiling for Pete that would infuriate me. Mike Tomlin's got a lot of this. I mean, right now, Steelers don't have a quarterback. Well, Ron Rivera in
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Washington. Well, I got Sam Howell.
I'm,
Well,
I,
yeah.
I,
So I,
I
yeah,
think Gino's underrated because he was under pressure more than basically any quarterback in football the last 3 years and still
yeah,
completed 68% of his passes and won a bunch of games and threw for a bunch of yards. So I think Gino's underrated,
yeah,
but he's obviously not great and he's older. And I'm with you in your overall premise. Um, the, there's obviously a million differences between someone like me and these athletes and coaches. Obviously, that doesn't need to be said, but I'll say it
yeah,
anyway. But one of the biggest differences beyond the athleticism is I would be like, I'm going to go coach against Andy Reid, Sean Payton, and Jim Harbaugh, and Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, and Patrick Mahomes. Like the
right,
the path to winning seems borderline impossible. Like
yeah,
borderline impossible. It's like but these guys clearly don't think that way. Like they clearly have such ego, belief, confidence, wherever that line blurs between delusion and confidence. All of these guys seem to have it. They are the 1% of the 1%. But like when people are like, Aaron Rodgers should go quarterback the Raiders, I was like, I think he's smarter than that. I don't think he wants to go to a team with a ceiling that is 7 wins. Like, what is the bet? And I'm rambling. But like when Max Crosby was like, I want to be a Raider for life, a small part of me, I think less of you. Like, it's cool. Like, it's cool. It's admirable. Your name will be in the Ring of Honor, but I'm bummed. I want to see Max Crosby in his prime on a great team. Myles Garrett, it was just about the money. You could have gotten the money without saying you didn't want to go from Cleveland to Canton. They were going to pay you. You said you wanted to win. And then you're back. Like in football, I want to see these guys be straight mercenaries and see the best players in their prime play on the best teams. And I know these guys don't run from challenges, but I was like, Pete Carroll at his age thinks he can turn the Raiders into a winner in that division with no quarterback. Like, I think you're crazy. I think he's crazy.
yeah. Well, he, yeah. I mean, I
There's no
think
right. There's
he
no
looks at
way.
it
There's
like
no way he wins big in that spot, right?
he'll argue we got to play these guys anyway if we're any good in the AFC. You're gonna might as well face them 2 times, have them have our kind of, I think I mean Chip Kelly told me he looked at the Raiders Chiefs games every play and he told me we can match up with them. He goes, if we get a good quarterback, we can match up with them. He goes, we had them beat twice. So I think and I do think Kansas City last year was beatable. So
I know. And listen, and the league is designed for parity, and a big favorite in the NFL is 10 points. So of course,
yeah.
there is some truth to it, but you got a cleaner path in the AFC South. You just like teams most likely to host a playoff game next year. Like if you had to, there's 100 grand on the table. You get to pick it up if you're right.
Buffalo,
Right. Buffalo,
Baltimore,
Houston.
Philadelphia,
But see, like
Rams.
but I think Baltimore and Philly, like at least in those situations, it's like, well, Burrow is there. Jaden is there. Like there's they have real other team. Like Buffalo's the number one pick. Buffalo's won the division
Yes.
5 years in a row. They've got the MVP of the league. They've got the most talent. No other team is particularly compelling. I think Houston
Yeah.
might be my number two pick. The rest of the AFC South sucks. And I think Kansas City should still be there. Like I'm surprised to hear you having the Chargers catching them. But it's just I would be looking for, do I have a quarterback? Like if I was looking for a job, do I have a quarterback and do I have a path to winning? Like a reasonable
Yeah.
path to winning. And I don't think that there is really one in Vegas.
Danny Parkins. That was a good hour.
Anytime, buddy. This was fun, as always.